panelists across the globe. My name is Anna Cardona, and I have the privilege of serving as moderator for this panel today. I'm also serving as the CEO of Tate County Economic Development Foundation. It's an honor to be with you here today and to share a bit about the work that we're doing and, more importantly, why we're doing it. At the heart of our work is a simple but powerful mission. We are improving the lives of Tate County economic development citizens through economic empowerment. That's more than just a statement, and it's a daily commitment. At Tate County Economic Development Foundation, we believe that when individuals and communities have access to right resources, opportunities, and partnerships, they don't just survive, they thrive. We are working to ensure that the residents of Tate County have pathways to meaningful employment, entrepreneurship, and long-term economic resilience. But we're also looking beyond the traditional development models. Our vision is bold: to make Tate County the regenerative development eco-hub for the Southeast. Now, what does that mean? It means we're not just building for today, we're building for generations to come. Regenerative development is about creating systems that restore, renew, and revitalize. It integrates economic growth with environmental stewardship and community well-being. It's about asking not just what we can extract from our local economy, but what we can give back to it, how we can design ecosystems of opportunity that are inclusive, sustainable, and future-focused. From innovative workforce development programs to green infrastructure initiatives and entrepreneurship support, we are reimagining what economic development looks like in rural America. We are forging partnerships across sectors, public, private, and nonprofit, and aligning our efforts with education, industry, and innovation. We see Tate County as not a place for catching up, but as a place that is leading the way, a model for rural regeneration in the Southeast and beyond. I want to thank you so much for your support to the Davos Worldwide team, for inviting me here today. And I want to open it up for introductions to the panel. I'll kick it over to Chad Frischman for his introduction.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, Anna, for having us here, and thank you to the community chiming in from all over the world to Davos Worldwide. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Chad Frischman. I work at the intersection between climate solutions, sustainability, and regenerative systems. I'm the CEO and founder of an organization called Regenerative Intelligence, or Regen Intel for short. We're an education and advisory company that helps guide organizations and individuals in how to become leaders of the next economy, a regenerative economy and society that benefits all life. I'm also the founder and lead on a nonprofit called the Global Solutions Alliance, where we work together with organizations and individuals from all over the world to how to see the cascading benefits and map the cascading benefits of solutions, systemic solutions that also multi-solve for climate sustainability and regeneration. Prior to that, I was the creator and architect of Project Drawdown and the Drawdown Solutions Framework, which has become the world's leading resource for climate solutions. Led that team for over 8 years. And now we work to go beyond climate, looking at how those same sets of solutions that can help stop and reverse global warming can also help us achieve our sustainable development goals, create the foundation for a regenerative economy, and actually be the backbone of the regenerative development goals. So I'm very happy to hear, Anna, the work that you're doing at Tate County. Love to learn more about that. Thanks, everybody. Good to be here.
Thank you, Chad. I'll kick it over to Raul for his introduction.
Guys, it was a great pleasure to be here. My name is Rahul Mitra. I am the Chief Operating Officer for safe shore, as well as we are in the business of providing BSS system or battery storage solutions across the globe. Um, Usually, it means lithium batteries and other battery solutions that can um, in energy transition platforms, as well as providing it for the homes and for the grid level solution. My background mostly is procurement, and I've been a chief operating officer for a couple of public companies in my previous ventures. Um, Other than this, we also focus on outsourcing, especially in healthcare industry. And basically, I'm happy to be here, and I would love to talk and learn from everybody else what they have in their portfolios.
Fantastic. Thank you, Raul. I'll pass it over to Vit for his introduction now.
Okay, I'm finally unmuted. Hi, my name is Vít Krajček. I'm from Czech Republic, and I'm founder and owner of a company which is working in renewable energies for the last 16 years. We are behind some big projects. I quite like the theme of this panel because exactly that's what we're trying to do. So to develop projects without necessity of the subsidies, because the subsidy is something which damaging the business and even like to building the proper projects. But this is something we'll probably discuss a little bit later. Just quickly, we are at the moment behind some of the biggest projects in Europe, and part of that are also feasibility studies. And all of the projects we're working on at the moment are like privately financed without any subsidies. Thank you.
Fantastic, Vit. Thank you. Scott, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone across the world. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, panelists. It's a real privilege. Scott Lopez. I am in New Mexico, USA, Albuquerque metro area. I originally from Santa Fe. I'm a New Mexico native. I'm a former Marine Corps officer and veteran, investment banker. I also have a utility construction background. So I come at this from the nexus of infrastructure, energy, broadband. My whole focus is helping improve tribal communities in our state. We have over 24 of them, including the Navajo Nation, rural communities, as well as our metro markets. Sustainable energy, affordable, reliable, resilient energy, I think is the foundation of any economic development. Infrastructure development equals economic development. And so if we don't have that, we don't have anything else, right? We won't have the broadband that we need desperately. We won't have the new water systems. We won't be able to train the workforce because there won't be a workforce because people won't be living there. So I'm very sensitive and active in this nexus point of infrastructure, business development, and government affairs. And here to be a resource, here to be a networking partner. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Rudy, I'll kick it over to you for introductions.
Yes, hello world. Thank you for having me on. Um, you know, my company's Wolves LLC. We're a small outfit with large, close partnerships with a handful of conglomerate size partners. Background is entrepreneur, built up multiple businesses, sold them. Got into the CRE private equity space years ago, scaled into the energy. What my positioning is I bring capital. We deploy capital for behind the meter projects at a large scale. Think of data centers, stadiums, hospitals, anything that uses a lot of power. The focus is not just to deploy capital, but to create these entities into small mini utility companies to, run more efficient, take the pressure off of residents in the surrounding area, along with other businesses to really help push this whole initiative to help, the world with a lot of these other colleagues on the panel to, get to the Star Trek level of, living where we all want to go. So, um, involved in large battery scale projects, you know, basically funding everything that's not just behind the meter, but also the infrastructure of, turbines and boilers and chillers and geothermal, fuel cells, solar, all those kind of things, central plants. So that's where we come in. I've got multiple billions behind me to work and to help, scale projects around the country and in Canada. And that's what I'm here to do is just really help move things forward for our world to, make sure that we have the energy to sustain our lives. And without energy, nothing works. So we really have to focus on creating this platform to help us level up to the next iteration of what we're evolving as a species. So that's me, and I appreciate my time.
Thank you, Rudy. And I'll kick it over to our last introduction, Melrose.
Hey there, how are you? Melrose Wild. I am the CEO of Permaculture Capital. I'm also owner operator of a group called Decision Society Inc. I'm based outside of Jackson Hole in Wyoming. My first career was in the fashion industry. I spent 15 years there, was horrified by the environmental impacts as well as some physical health issues I experienced from that industry. Part of my frustrations as a female founder was the capital formations market as well as the fundraising process. So part of my thesis now is to support companies that include women in the operating realm. I am a placement agent. I work with my financial licenses under a broker dealer called Emergence. We focus on permaculture as an asset class. That means anything that goes in, on, or around your body. Think energy, food, water, building materials, textiles, anything willing to use circular economy, toxicity disruptors, and reducers, healthcare, and emerging technology. We raise capital. We do fundraising campaigns. We do investor relations. We're now raising our first fund. And I support one of the largest later stage fusion companies that has raised over $1.6 billion to date, all privately. They actually haven't even tried to raise subsidies for their technology. We also have a large atmospheric water company that we're very bullish on. We advocate for the use of DAFs on things that are altruistic that the government is not, or makes it difficult to get subsidies and funding for. And happy to talk a little bit more about that and our partnership with how we can engage using DAFs to get these altruistic technologies out into the industry so that we can stop having such a shortage of electrons in the marketplace.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that beautiful round of introductions. As you can see, viewers, we have a stellar, dynamic, all-star lineup of panelists. And we're going to do it sort of popcorn informal style. I've got a few questions that I'm going to open up to the group, and whoever would like to pop in and answer, feel free. We'll do it that way. So we're talking about financing renewable energy infrastructure without subsidies, which is a major pivot from past policies. To open, how realistic is this shift across different global contexts, and what does subsidy-free really mean in practice?
I can start with just
Okay.
saying that we just need to pay attention to the length of administrations when we talk about subsidies and what's going on in our government. So I guess to start out with why there aren't subsidies moving forward, it's obviously administrative. And I think while America pauses subsidies on renewable energy and programs like this, it's important to note that places like Europe and the Middle East are actually going harder on regulations and support of innovative technologies. So instead of having a doomsday conversation, I think it would be valuable for us to talk about the solutions. And for us, it's the DAF mechanism. For those who don't know, a DAF is a donor advised fund. It's a fancy tool in the US for wealthy individuals to front load 5 years of capital gains tax into a vehicle that is technically supposed to be invested into charitable organizations, but there are mechanisms now where you can invest them into for-profit companies, and they can make a lot of money. The distributions go back into the DEF, but it's a great way to grow your charitable trust and to invest in these vehicles, and we're using it now, and we see that it actually is a great way to go around this administrative situation.
We have seen as the subsidies are going away, what we are seeing in the market mostly is that it's allowing a lot of new companies to enter in. The subsidies kind of restricts which companies can sell in the market. And because the subsidies are done by the government, there is a lot more regulation that a company that's providing the product has to go through to get it approved. Without the subsidies, I think there will be a lot more competition, and we will see a lot more newer technologies coming into the play, which we haven't seen over the last, I'll say, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, I want to just jump in here. I think, Mel and Raul say, two really important points. One is that when we're talking about renewable energy infrastructure and transitioning to a hopefully regenerative, not just sustainable, regenerative energy systems, we're not only talking about the US, we're talking about globally. We have to look beyond the US and what's happening in the current administration when we're seeing subsidies evaporate and being phased out. So we have to see this as a more diversified approach into a global energy system, looking to places like China, looking to places like the EU, and very importantly, how can we look at the African context, which is very diverse and yet represents a huge potential growth for markets, for population growth, and the need to actually electrify a lot of parts of Africa. That leapfrogging capacity in Africa opens up a huge opportunity for investment, but more importantly, the cascading benefits that come along with renewable energy. So sure, let's reduce emissions, let's provide abundant electricity to folks, but there's so many additional co-benefits that come along when we invest in renewable energy, and places like the Africa context can be funded, supported through all sorts of global mechanisms and financing mechanisms, and see all those cascading benefits happen. And I think what we're all saying is absolutely spot on, because the subsidies in the US have traditionally in other parts of the world have biased towards certain companies. And what this can create is a more competitive environment. We're going to see lots of innovation. As I often talk about in the sense in the sort of the grander system of solutions that I talk about more broadly beyond renewable energy, it's not just thinking about solar panels and wind turbines as they are today, or the data of the technology that actually is usually a few years behind, when we're looking at the global prospectus here. It's the innovations that are going to come in the renewable sector. So imagining, our solar panels and our wind turbines and advanced and geothermals as being next generation. And I think removal of subsidies can incite that kind of innovation that we need to see those innovations turn solar, wind, geothermal, perennial biomass, tidal, wave, etc., to be more resource productive, more effective, more efficient, and more cost efficient. But we're already seeing wind and solar with levelized costs of energy at some of the lowest in different parts of the world already without subsidies. So there's a reality check that subsidies are important in certain places, in certain contexts. They'll help spur on that transition. But there are opportunities to also see innovations in technology that in the US can actually, I think, see a huge growth and exploration of different kinds of technologies within solar, within wind, within the renewable technology. So I want to just echo what Mel and Raul were saying there.
Yeah, I'm just going to support it as well, because I think the biggest problem with the subsidies is that it's kind of delayed. It's made by politicians rather than real professionals, and it's delayed behind the technology. It's delayed behind the prices. and everything. So and many European countries learned very hard way to introduce some subsidies, and now they even Czech Republic, Poland, even Germany pay very high taxes on the energy because the subsidies introduced back in 2010, which were introduced like with a very long delay. The prices dropped down, and the countries now pay very high fees on energy, and we as a consumers have to pay that. So that's a big problem of the subsidies. And as you said, Chad, that's right that the subsidies are needed for the innovation, definitely. I'm absolutely for that. But at the moment, with the solar, when the prices are historically the lowest on the market for the PV modules, and with the batteries, most of my colleagues also in the big battery systems. So with the prices of the batteries, at the moment, like most of the projects, if you back like the traditional PV, wind, and the batteries, that you don't need any subsidy. With the market level, most of the countries all around the world on the spot prices. Farther you from the equator, then the spot prices are different between the day and night and winter and summer. And it's very easy to make a profitable project with very short ROI, like we're talking about like 3 to 5 years in many countries at the moment, because you're supporting not just like you keeping the energy and deliver it to the grid when it's needed, when it's the most expensive, but you're also stabilizing the grid with the system. So you paid by the grid operators for that. So at the moment, I think it's absolutely the right time for investors to go on the market. And I can see many big projects happening in Europe as well in South America, which are coming like with this idea. So combination of renewable energy and the storage, supporting the grid, and it's easy. The return on investment is very, very short in this case. So, but again, I absolutely agree with you. Use the subsidies for the innovation because there's still big space. So I would use rather that for that than for like installation of large PV parks and battery storages.
I think there is some hope in Tate County, Mississippi, where I'm stewarding the county. We offer a 75% tax abatement for job creation in regenerative companies. So there are some pockets of the world that are offering things like this, but in other places of the world, what innovative financing mechanisms are you seeing emerge that can viably replace subsidies in large-scale renewable energy projects?
I can speak to that. Um, so basically, with what I do as well in my team, that's what we do is we help offset the cap stacks that seem to be the challenge for a lot of these high-level projects with the data centers being lifted. I mean, if you've got $100 million project, let's say, and 10 million of that is energy infrastructure to build out in the stack. We know that the next 10, 20, 50 years, whatever that's going to be, is going to be a certain amount of consumption of energy. So when you can bundle that together and fire an additional capital and take over the contract for that and give a set price every month that that project is going to be paying, you're limiting their costs. You're also, giving them more capital than what they expected. Sometimes that can offset some of the equity that they're missing, that they're short on. That can also give a lot of confidence to equity partner investors wanting to come in because they see a large type of energy fund entity or what have you that is going to be a partner in that in some fashion. So, speaking to the subsidies, I never look at, my administration as, this side, that side. I look at what are the policies coming down. I'm a math guy. I want to see what the policies are coming down, which policies are heavy with subsidies, which are not, depending on what scope of time we're in. And then it's all about calculating where the pivots are and where the adjustments on capital and what we can do to get creative in the market to keep moving things forward. I think that with everything that I'm involved in, seeing from the federal side to the public side, when you're looking at all of this accumulatively, you look at the renewables, you look at the oil, coal, natural gas, all these things are all symbiotic. They have all got to play together. We've got to have a balance, and it's all about creating an efficiency for all of it. So you keep the pollution down, jobs, people earn jobs. Look at why subsidies are being pulled back. One of my other colleagues, he owned a solar, or excuse me, a wind company. He built the big, the wind turbines. He said, Rudy, if I didn't get subsidies, I'd be bankrupt because there's no money in this. I'm not generating enough money, so I have to have the government help me. So there's plus and minuses to that. It's like, okay, we're generating some clean energy from the windmills, but the costs, and then the big thing that no one really talks about that I'm seeing in the market, from Mississippi to Florida to Texas to all these places, even in India and all these other places, is if we can all start thinking through why we're on this energy gold rush that's happening real time. It's going from the public to private, that's really ramping up now, is recyclability, where some entities are going to create systems to be able to recycle these products, the batteries, the solar, the wind, all these materials, and then put it back into the market. So that's going to be the next gold rush, in my opinion, is that, hey, we're all firing capital. We've got all these great ideas. We're trying to work with our partner countries and we're trying to get to Star Trek level living. But then it's like, well, what do we do with all the waste? So if we can figure out the waste mechanism, that's going to bring costs down at some level. I'm not a real nerded out guy. I'm not as smart as, some people from the colleges or this and that in certain areas, but I understand math, I understand economics, and the thing is that's what no one's talking about is how do we recycle these things? And by doing so, we're going to get other sets of subsidies with that. We're going to have other partners coming on board to fulfill the subsidy lacking over here. And that's how we kind of just keep trying to work together to balance things to keep this whole goal moving forward. So I just wanted to share that.
That's great. Scott, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah, absolutely, Rudy. I was thinking the exact same thing. Here in New Mexico, again, we have tribal communities, rural communities, metro communities. We're only 2.1 million people, but we're about the sixth or seventh largest landmass state. It is a portfolio approach, right, to our energy needs, right? I've got electric utilities for rural co-ops. I've got regular utilities. I've got tribal utilities. We've got solar. We've got wind. We've got nuclear. We've got natural gas. We've got hydro. We've got geothermal. A lot of hot rock in New Mexico, so there's a lot of interest to develop the geothermal capability here in our state. Transmission lines and connectivity to that transmission lines. All of these real world opportunities and constraints are happening right here in this state. I absolutely agree with Rudy. It has to be. I think we're missing the boat. Everybody here, if you don't look at your asset class from cradle to grave, right? Because what we are seeing here is a lot of solar projects that are now end of life, and I've got solar panels that can't be repurposed. The nearest recycling facility is in Dallas, or it's in Phoenix, or it's in Denver. So it's not cost effective for the county manager or the public works folks to actually do anything with those. And so they get buried. That's a biohazard. And very candidly, I don't see any environmentalists or the Sierra Club talking about that, right? And so I think it's a real disservice if we don't look at the full cycle. Same thing with the windmills. I've got massive, massive wind projects in New Mexico. Some of the largest ones on the planet through Pattern Energy are happening right here in our area. 500 miles worth of transmission lines. I mean, we're going to be doing wind here for the next 20 years. But what do we do with the wind blades? We bury them because we can't recycle them yet. We also have the nation's only cradle to grave nuclear ecosystem. I've got uranium mines. I've got uranium legacy issues. I've got storage issues. There's no SMRs and hyperscale data centers without nuclear, and there's no nuclear without uranium. And we've got to clean up the old uranium issues that we have. And what do we do with all the waste? So I think it's really important to look at the innovation and the opportunities in the full life cycle analysis. The LCOE, the leveraged or levelized cost of energy, is incomplete if we don't look at that. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well if we start looking at the full cycle and where those gaps are. Thank you.
Fantastic. Mel, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, so I think it's important to talk about what's happening in the bill and actually the subsidies for energy that will exist in 2026. So nuclear is going to have government investing, and there's I think $750 million that's being allocated for loans to nuclear. Now, what's nuclear? Generally, it's fission, depending on uranium. It's not stable. It's quite dangerous. No one wants it in their backyard. I hope, as somebody who's advocating for fusion, that some of those resources will go towards creating opportunities for fusion, because fusion is stable. My dad was an automotive engineer, and he used to say to me, honey, electric is not the way to go because it's tied to a grid. I think we're all seeing that now with batteries and the fact that electricity is tied to coal and fossil fuels. So, and again, like what I want to echo what Scott is saying, like these not having cradle to grave and not having something that's renewable, and that is essentially harnessing the sun in a non-needing panel way, we create more problems for ourselves down the line. Now, of course, waste is considered a part of our asset class, and we consider it a resource, certainly. But when you can't do anything with it, it's highly problematic. I was just at the Harvard Climate Symposium in September. And there was a lot of talk about battery, and there was a lot of talk about recycling, and there was a lot of talk about nuclear, more fission than fusion, which was a little disappointing. But one thing I will say is that I think we might want to talk about is that, subsidies aren't necessarily like a great thing. Subsidies can be very bad for industry. We've seen it across farming. It's created a very toxic experience for us in this country as far as food goes. It stifles innovation. It creates complacency and dependency on the government for toxic systems, and it creates a dependency and lobbying that is really not great for us to, as Americans, become innovators and accelerate innovations that are circular into the marketplace. So I think actually this is a little bit of a blessing. We also need to look exactly at what the bill says and how much money is going to be able to be allocated towards nuclear and which nuclear it will go towards. But, when you think about farming, think about the subsidies, how corn is in everything. It's in your makeup, it's in your car, it's in your food, it's everywhere now. And corn is incredibly toxic because of Monsanto, and then you have to spray glyphosate on it with these seeds, and there's lobbying, and it's created a really toxic environment. Now, there's other things that can be done to change and reclimate those farms. But the farms that are doing great are the organic farms, the regenerative farms, the farms that are not willing to damage the soil in 2 generations and have to reclimate the land. I have 9 farms in the valley that I live in. They're all organic. I am almost entirely off of the American food system where I live now. And when we localize energy and when we localize our systems and we use innovation, we don't actually even need the subsidies, and it creates a marketplace that's incredibly profitable. So I think instead of being afraid of subsidies going away, we need to know exactly which ones are being allocated where and fight for them to go towards better nuclear. And then I think we also need to start thinking about localizing systems with energy versus just everyone depending on Houston to figure it out. Because when you drive into Houston, there's giant billboards rationing energy, and that's crazy. California has to shut their energy off half the day. I mean, it's nuts where we're at as a country. And I think a lot of it is to blame on subsidies.
Makes sense. So when you're looking at across the nation and across the globe, what types of projects or geographies are currently attracting the most private capital without subsidies, and why do you think that is?
I think, Chad, go ahead. I'll let you.
Yeah, if I can, I just wanted to touch base on the previous question, and I'll leave it to Vit and Rudy to address this one more, because I did want to chime in a little bit. And I think there's a little bit of a problem in the narrative here that was described around the recyclability and materiality of solar and wind. We actually do know how to recycle a lot of these panels, and we do know how to do this, and it is not as cost effective to do as it could be. And that opens up an opportunity to innovate and maybe even shift subsidies away from, say, solar panels themselves or wind turbines to actually recyclability and materiality in industry to deal with this. But we actually do know how to do it. It's not that expensive to do. It may be a little bit farther, or transportation that recyclable materials to a facility that can actually handle it, but we do know how to do it. But we also have to remember that the solar panels and wind turbines that are at their end of life today are not the solar panels and turbines that are being produced today, right? they're 15 to 20 years old. They're an old technology. And a lot of the reports that we see where we look at, this red herring around, the materiality of solar and wind and renewable energies are from reports that are 8 years old. Very few are actually looking at technology of today, let alone technology of tomorrow that is already being, prototyped and researched and so on. So we go back to that innovation of existing technologies, and we're going to be able to produce these renewable energy systems that are far more effective, far more resource productive, and we already know how to recycle these materials into useful forms. So it is all actually there. It's our decision to invest in that and actually to kind of do away with some of these red herrings. I really want to make that clear. The other red herring that often gets pushed from the fossil fuel industries is that, oh my goodness, all of the extraction and exploitation from producing materials for solar and wind. It is true. We have to extract and exploit for the materiality of these energy systems, but it is a fraction of the exploitation and extraction for coal, oil, and gas, a fraction. And the pollution and the waste that comes from fossil fuel industry is a fraction of what is the waste from solar, wind, and renewable energies. So we have to reset our mind, we have a mindset shift here and not follow along with fossil fuel media propaganda that spends billions of dollars to convince us all that renewable energy shouldn't be done. It absolutely should be done. We have the technology, we have the know-how to create a cradle to cradle renewable energy system, a regenerative renewable energy system. We have that technology today. And I also, one more thing I wanted to pick up with Mel Rose, because I think she's spot on here. And just to add to this, thinking about how do we deal with, bypassing the requirements of subsidies, again, in this country, is thinking about stacking solutions, systems of solutions. So when we talk about regenerative agriculture, we have agro-photovoltaics. We have using renewable energy systems in industry. So as we think about this is happening all over Saudi Arabia, all over the Middle East, right? Desalination plants that are required to produce clean water for populations are installing renewable energy systems on site. Regenerative agriculture, solutions required for our food production for the planet, adding agro-photovoltaic. You get win-win-win-win solutions that reduce the cost of implementation and have a huge return on that benefit, regardless of subsidies. And maybe we find subsidies not in solar, but in agriculture. Maybe not in solar, but in materiality in desalination plants, in industry. And then we couple that with renewable energy and we create these, and I think Vit might talk about this combination of renewable energy, battery, hydro, storage, mixed with all of these things and reduce the distribution losses from our grids. We actually can provide all the energy requirements we need with technology that exists today. So I'll just want to throw that out there, and Vit, if you wanted to jump in.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just jumping back to the recycling, just a quick one. Just you may be aware that in Europe we do that slightly different. We have to pay a recycling fee at the beginning when we build the power plant. Yeah, and it's like for the compliance scheme, a collective compliance scheme, it's taken and it's guaranteed that after the lifespan of the PV plant, everything is recycled properly. So that's a good advantage of the Europe, and I think that's something that there can be used subsidies in the US to come up with this collective compliance scheme. Okay, you have to pay some money up front, but then you have guaranteed that it's properly recycled at the end of the life. So this is pretty good one. And then the question was, what's at the moment the most project which are like privately financed without subsidy? It's easy. The batteries changed everything, and the price of the batteries, which went down a lot, changed everything. So at the moment, any combination of the PV, of the hydro, of the wind, and everything with batteries, it's again very profitable. So all the investors go for that because where you can make the money, you can make the money on the market leveling. And it's like most of Europe, in fact, everywhere in Europe, you can work with market leveling. And the return on investment just with that is like 6 to 7, 8 years, depends on the country. If you add the grid stabilization, you're down to 5 years. And it's very similar, even like I just checked the Brazil, for example, and the spot prices are also quite different. They're jumping up and down. So even in countries like Brazil, you can get to the same point. So when like the battery is changing or all the beds and everything, many companies previously in Europe installed big PV plants. But now, because of the spot prices, you're producing when the price is even negative in Europe. They have introduced like negative prices of the energy. So if you're delivering to the grid, you have to pay for that, which is crazy. So at the moment, if you have a PV plant without batteries, your PV plant is shut down for half of the time because if you deliver to the grid, you have to pay for it. So then I am just repeating myself, but again, the big game changer is the BESS, the battery energy systems, the batteries, price of the batteries, because now it makes sense and it's very profitable after a very short time.
Start on, I agree with you 100%. We are seeing, we talk to a lot of countries across the globe, and what we are seeing is energy shortage in most of the countries, especially in Asia, Africa, and even Middle East. Some of these countries are 30% short in energy as of right now. And like you stated before, BSS systems are becoming more efficient. We just developed a BSS system with 5 gigs and 10 gigs to a container. Um, it is providing as a secondary source of power to the grids. Because of that, a lot of technology is going into the battery storage solution. One of the questions which you guys raised on the recycling of the old products, the reason why the recycling is not getting done is, and it is all cost based, it's not effective enough. Currently, the batteries that we are using for our BSS are 8,500 or 12,000 cycles, which means they will last, uh, system will last for 18 years without ever have to replace a battery. Minimum of 10 years to 11 years, up to 18 years. So the technology is changing so fast that to set up a whole industry to do for the older products is might not be viable. I just want to give it up on that part. But regarding the question where the most demand in the market is, the most demand in the market right now is Africa, Asia, and Middle East, especially for BSS as a storage and using that storage power during the demand when it's really required.
Thanks, Raul. The, the so the question that you had stated was, Anna, was about, where this private capital is going, and to for did I say your name correct? Is it Rahul? Did I say that correct, sir?
Yes, you did
Okay,
say
okay. Yeah, great, great. So, what I'm seeing in the area of private, of capital firing in is mining. Mining is heavy. A lot of, some of these larger funds in the country are buying up utility companies. There's a lot of moves being made with the private capital. And the reason why mining is so important, you would think it's easy to figure out, but a lot of energy is put into mining these materials for our phones, computers, and everything else that we need these materials for. And so, when subsidies are pushed back, when last 4 years was heavy renewable. Now we're, nuclear and oil, and then it'll switch back, and lobbyists are on both sides and everyone. But if we look at how everything is tracking, it's like one phase steps forward, another phase steps forward, another phase steps forward. So we're all going in the right direction, no matter where your passion is placed. But the private capital is really investing heavily in these infrastructures with the natural gas, with a lot of these lines and different areas in our country, specifically in the U.S. and also Canada, is how to tie in these other types of energy resources to power all of these entities, and also moving capital overseas into different countries to help, scale their economies, create more jobs over there to mine, and then everything just organically just starts happening in real time. So, you know, when you look at the economics of things, there's always going to be plus and minuses to whatever those policies are, and I think that for what I'm seeing, there's just a really big rush to get behind all of private capital is the first wave was, hey, let's just buy up all this CRE stuff, office spaces and everything else, and now everyone's funneling all the money into energy because they see like, well, wait a minute, we can't do anything without energy. And we're not going to be able to afford to do anything if our energy is too high and we're relying on these old utility companies that haven't kept up with their tech and everything else. So, capital moves at the top in the retail capital markets, from the equity side of things. But when you start looking at all the money being moved at the top, that's where you really got to focus on. You can't look at it, on the ground of this little thing or that little thing. You got to see where everything is pivoting and why they're doing it. So I think it kind of just kind of overshadows the question of, what is this subsidy? You got to just look at where all the big players going, and what's the reasoning and what's the why. There's always more of a two or three layer deep of a why to each metric of that said of that said industry. So that's where, I don't think, subsidies matter one way or the other, because at that level, they don't really care. They're speed to market. How do we get the capital in? How do we lock up all these systems so we can not only make a profit, but we can also say, hey, we created efficiencies, people's powers are stabilized, residents aren't having their kilowatts spike because data centers are sucking up all the energy in the area or whatever it is, or the mining. So that's my 2 cents. But thank you for the time. I'll pass it on to whoever else has got their hand up.
I just want to be really honest about who has the most money in the private markets right now. And I think it's pretty obvious, but I'll just say it out loud so we can have a dialogue around it. It's the oil companies and the tech companies, right? So they're heavily invested into energy because of where we're at with oil as a country. And also the consumption of the electrons in the marketplace are being like cannibalized by these giant tech companies. So they have the most vested interest in finding renewable technologies. And so while we demonize the oil guys and the tech bros, the issue is that they are our biggest hope as an investment from the private markets to fund the innovation, and they are actively investing in this space. Now, getting meetings with them as a small innovator is not easy. That's why it's important to build out your board and make sure that you have advocates fighting for your innovation to get through. It's important to be identified with Ivy League chapters and groups. And one of the most interesting things that has happened to me through Climate Week was watching Vicky Hollub from Occidental speak at Harvard's Climate Symposium. And it was not only because she got boycotted, but after the boycott was over, she brought up some very interesting points that I'd like to share here about oil, which is that 82% of our oil is domestic from 50% before. She also mentioned that the atmosphere has 50% more CO2 than it did in pre-industrial times. So the best thing to do with oil, if we're as a country concerned with being dependent on Russia or the Middle East in the next 10 years with our oil reserves, is to take CO2 and pump it into existing wells. But what most people don't know is that 70% of shale production today are from wells from the last 3 years. So it's critical that we can extract oil from pre-existing wells using these innovative technologies. We have a few innovators on our platform that do a great job with oil extraction from wells that were long abandoned. But if we don't want to depend on Russia and China, according to Vicky, in the next 10 years, we have to figure out renewable energy. And we should be very honest about how dependent as a society we still are on oil. We have to be realistic that the clothes on your body, the the signs that you boycott with, the pen that wrote on the signs, those are all made with oil. And so for us to demonize oil, we culturally aren't accepting that how we've become to this place of innovation and comfort as human beings is largely thanks to oil. And if, Shell is one of the largest investors in an innovation, but they also own a lot of the patents. So the more that they get bullied, the more likely they are to hold off on implementing those patents until the public actually releases some of the nooses that they put around their neck. So I think we have to understand that things like desal that X Prize has pumped $100 million into, and other things like fusion that are still a couple years away from net energy, we have to make sure that we don't run out of our energy as is, that we can stop the fires happening in in California, and that we're just taking care of our planet. We have to be really honest with what we're doing to our planet. An unintelligent species is a species that will corrupt its only environment. Okay. We're not going to go live on Mars in our lifetimes or within the next 20 or 10 years when we're dependent on oil. The Earth has shifted and tilted 31 inches. Okay. That's from moving so much groundwater around that we've changed the tilt of our planet. Okay. We can only extract resources from the planet for so long before planet Earth will start winning against us. When people say save the planet, I think it's really funny because it's actually save the humans, because the planet can only be so out of whack before she eradicates us. And so at a certain point, we have to be really honest. What's the innovation? Who's funding it? We have to go into those massive pools of private capital and become allies with people that we may or may not be grateful for, but who got us to where we're at as a society today. So I think it's really, really important for us to be honest about what we're doing to the planet, but also what are the tools that get us to recovery and less dependent on oil as fast as possible.
I love that. I love your passion for that. So for a quick fire round, in one sentence, what is the single most important financial innovation we need to scale renewable energy without subsidies in the next 5 years?
I'll kick it off. I'll just say in terms of oil and gas, we have the Permian Basin here in New Mexico, and we have more productive oil fields than probably anybody else in the country. And people don't realize that. I mean, we are 55% of our tax revenues come from oil and gas in our state, in addition to all the, portfolio approach to all the energy, baseload generation sources. I think the most innovative opportunity that I've seen out there is infrastructure as a service, where, you've got, I'll just throw out a name, companies like Sustainability Partners, which is operating in 17 different states, and they will work with a county or a state or a tribal entity or a city to scope the project, scope the grid upgrade or the microgrid or whatever that asset is, not just energy, and then they will amortize it out for 25 to 30 years, and that entity pays a usage fee. Right? It's not a massive CapEx out of the table, or pardon me, out of the gate. And so then you've got major investors lined up to fund those capital projects. But I think infrastructure as a service is something that is really attractive and is going to help a lot of rural communities maybe get that cash, get their projects kicked off, and companies like that stay with the project and keep it upgraded, and they bring technical capacity to help in year 10 and 15 and 20 down the road.
I would say fusion for electrons, hydrogen for transit, atmospheric water for water, and localization organic for food. I think fusion, though, if I'm going to say one word on this, it's fusion all the way. I'm so impressed with the team that we're working with. They've been able to raise 1.6 billion privately to date. I think it's our greatest hope as a species. I believe fusion will be the greatest innovation that humans come up with in the information age, because it changes everything for us. To be able to harness and recreate the sun to motivate our innovation and fuel us in the future is critical for us to survive as a species. So I'm all in on fusion.
I fully agree with Mel that fusion is something like we all looking forward to. I'm just afraid it will take still some time to get there. And in the meantime, I agree with Scott as well, because I like what you said, infrastructure as a service. That's amazing idea. And in fact, this is exactly what we need. Like if you go to a restaurant, you want to have a meal prepared from regional ingredients. So like with the energy, the ideal situation is if you can consume the energy where it's produced, because then you're saving a lot of money on the high voltage components and stuff like that. The first, you stabilize the grid and you save the losses on the long distances. So it's absolutely perfect. This is something what we're aiming for, and what's supposed to start even from the residential, up to the CNI and up to the large industrial projects. So I think this is absolutely ideal. Microgrids and, as you said, infrastructure as a service. I really like it.
So we see a lot of
Awesome.
microgrids solutions coming through in the near future. Um, there are also a lot of talks with a lot of countries of micronuclear or fusion plants. So that will be a new thing that will be coming up. Not the big nuclear, but micronuclears or fusion, to be very honest. That
Mhm.
is something big talks with all of the growing countries. Other than that, the technology is changing on a daily basis. Means if you ask my opinion, what I want to see at least, I know there is a certain amount of technology available in solar that we can get up to 46 or 47% efficiency on the panels. I want to see those on the market, which will change, which I believe, feel will change the global picture of renewable energy if we can get to that kind of a level. Um, I still believe they are in test, but hopefully we might see that in the next 3 or 4 years. We'll see them in mass production, and that's basically what I look forward. Thank you, guys.
So it looks like we're coming up on our time to wrap up, but if we meet here, let's say in the next 5 years, what do you hope will have changed the most in how we finance renewables?
So I'll speak on that. I think with everything with the renewables, where it's going, I think a lot of that technology that is, helping with this renewables is gonna, basically shift more into some of the energies that aren't as renewable. And I think energy as a service overall, I think where everything is headed, it's all about taking a lot of these different energy applications from the solar to the batteries, natural gas, fusion, oil, all these kind of things, and applying a very efficient with the right tech, the cleanest way possible to apply that energy in the set areas that it makes the most sense. Because we can all want to blanket the whole country, but some areas aren't, it is not as conducive in other areas to put natural gas here, or maybe we need fusion over here. So I think as a push as a whole, I see the whole industry with a lot of the help with the big tech bros to really create these technologies to help move everything together as a unit to be able to pick the right application for the right areas, not just in our country, the US, but across the planet. And I think overall in humanity, I think everybody wants to breathe clean air. Everybody wants to raise their family. We want to look at trees. We want to enjoy nature. So I think the greater good is on the plate more so than greed. But eventually that'll go away. Pertaining to what Elon says, robots and AI is gonna, not, we don't have to work as hard anymore. So I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
One very important thing to mention
Wow.
on this topic is that the wirehouses unlock their DAFs to be able to invest in for-profit impact-oriented companies, which is why DAFs were created. Fidelity, Schwab, and Merrill safeguarding DAFs and investing them in their own ETFs is a crime against humanity, and they really need to unlock it because this money could $250 billion are sitting in DAFs today that could totally motivate this entire industry. So I stand on a soapbox preaching about this, but I think that could actually change the world as we know it if they just unlock all of that money.
Just want to jump in here so I have an opportunity to voice this last thing. In 5 years, what I would love to see is a little bit of what everybody is saying here. I would love to see fusion take shape. Hydrogen boron fusion was one of the solutions I promoted in Drawdown back 10 years ago. It could take 5 years, it could take 30 years, and that's the problem. And even if hydrogen boron fusion became something, sad truth is that it's not going to scale overnight to even have a dent in our global energy production. So it's great. It's going to take a long time to be economically feasible, to be viable. Rahul's got it spot on, though. If we can increase the productivity and the capacity factors of solar and wind from 25% to 40% in the next 5 years, oil and gas and fossil fuels are obsolete. It says economically, does it make sense to do this any longer? And if we increase that productivity within 5 years to 50, 60%, we can actually transform the entire game here. And the only other third thing I'd say is advanced geothermal. Total game changer. We have the technology now to have advanced geothermal all over the world. And by the way, through advanced geothermal, through the slush that comes from it, we can extract lithium and have abundant lithium to provide all the battery needs we not want without extracting anything from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So we actually know what to do. And we have it there in 5 years, advanced geothermal, highly productive, high capacity factor solar panels, wind and renewables will totally make fossil fuels obsolete. And the best people to do it, the best leverage to finance this are families. 70% of the world's economy come from family businesses. They understand intergenerational legacy. If you want to imagine your company in 30 years from now, the company, imagine your children or your grandchildren taking over that company in 30 years from now. What does that company look like? Where is it situated? What is it doing 30 years from now? One of the things we haven't talked at all about this panel is shifting our mindset from short-term profit to medium and long-term viability and thriving 30 years in the future. And the best people to do that are families who understand intergenerational legacy. They're the ones who's going to finance the regenerative future.
Fantastic. I think we've had an amazing conversation today. We've covered a lot of topics, very dynamic and insightful wisdom shared today. I want to thank all of the panelists that are here with us. I want to thank all of the viewers throughout the world who have joined us for this event. And we look forward to connecting again on maybe LinkedIn or social media in the near future.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.